Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Katherine Kelly, and I want to share with you a little bit about my New Year's ritual that I have done for decades. And, I can't even tell you how long I've done this, but I've certainly done it every year in this house. I've been in this house 17 holidays now. But there's something about new beginnings that are so important to really mark as a milestone. It's really important in our soul's evolution for us to recognize that every juncture in our life, every chapter in our life, and every difficult thing that we get through, every new beginning, whether it's a birth, a death, a wedding, or a funeral. I talk about this kind of stuff with clients all the time. There's something very important about us pausing long enough to take stock in what those events, what those situations, what those new beginnings mean for us, even though it might be a difficult time. And I am the first one to say, holidays are not always easy. My father died on December 26th. So Christmas for me and really New Year's for me has been tainted and changed ever since. It's just not the same. And so I understand it, and my heart goes out to those of you who have lost loved ones, whether it's throughout the year or during the holidays, because the holidays can really change meaning. But when it comes to the new year, I think it is still super important to take this time, this new beginning, as a time to just look at where we've been and start to reflect on where we want to go as well. And so I have a ritual I want to share with you. So many of you know that, because I share this pretty often, many of you know that, through the last couple months of the year, I do this sort of review of where my life has been and what I'm ready to let go of and what I've moved beyond and what I feel like I've made closure with. And I make a list, and then I basically burn that list as part of a ritual of release and preparing myself to usher in the new year. Now, I usually make sure that I do it by by December 31st, so that by January 1st, I have this new space to do this ritual that I'm going to share with you. And so every January 1st, one of the first things I do is I hop out of bed. I basically put some warm clothes on and I go smudge. And I'm going to tell you what smudging is if you don't know what that is. But I walk the perimeter of my property. I have about an acre. In a community, but it is an acre. And I walk the perimeter of my property and I use a smudge stick. Now, usually on the outdoors, I use sage, and sage is a Native American brush kind of herb that smells wonderful, by the way. But basically, it's an ancient tradition for Native Americans that basically they would smudge the land. They would use the energy of cleansing through smoke to basically, again, protect the energies and also usher out any energies you don't want, and also set the stage for whatever's coming next. So I walk the perimeter of my property using this smudge stick because I want my property to be just as sacred as my house. So I do that. I walk that first, and then I open some windows in every room in my house, no matter how cold it is. And that is very important for you to do if you're going to smudge your house. And then I basically use Palo Santo. Now, this is a Palo Santo cone. Palo Santo comes in, it's basically a native wood of South America, and it's very fragrant. It's wonderful. It's actually one of my favorite fragrances in general. But then I burn some Palo Santo, and I start at the very, front door, and I start going clockwise around the house. And I do the main level first. I walk upstairs, I do the upstairs, and then I go down to my basement, my garage, and I even do my porches, because there's something about not only clearing the space, but when you clear the space, you set the energy for what's coming next. And it is super important for us to do that and to be mindful of setting that energy for what is coming next. Now, for those of you who can't use smoke in whether it's an apartment building or an office or however you're planning to do this ritual, there are smudge sprays. And, this is my kick-ass Karma Clear from my Soul Health Essentials line of oils. And it's basically a room spray that you can do the same thing, but without the smoke. So there are other options for you if you cannot burn something within your house or your apartment or your condo or whatever it might be. But it is always important to crack a window in every room that you are going to smudge, because you want that energy to leave. You don't want it just kind of hanging out. And so it's super important to let that energy leave the room. Now, I also, because I'm sensitive to energy and I do energy work on certain friends and my animals and the earth, that you can also kind of usher out the energy by literally just kind of using your hands to sweep the energy out through the window. You could also use bells. I have the bells that I use around, I've used them at my office. I've used them here. It just depends on what it is that you feel like you need at that time. But, my ritual every January 1st is to use, again, the sage on the outside and the Palo Santo on the inside. Then what I do is I sit down and I write my intentions out for what I want the next year to be. And it's a very, to me, another important part of our soul's evolution to set those intentions. And in my world, excuse me, I talk about setting a theme for the year so that you know what you are working on, you know what your soul is going to be doing and working on, and how it's going to be developing. So I spend that day, the day before, doing the cleaning out, the closure exercise, and then the January 1st is doing something to usher in new energy. Now, something else I want to share with you, and this is something I have done for years, is every time there's a milestone, every time there's something I've accomplished, every time there's something I've closed out, when I know that there's a new beginning, I always do what I call my transition meal. And what I do with this is there's a meal that I actually stole it's not really a recipe, but I stole the idea, not even the idea, but I stole the meal from a restaurant way back in Nashville, Indiana. When I was going through grad school, there was this pasta meal that I just loved. And every time I go through a transition, I make this meal. Whether I share it with people or not, I make this meal and I use that time and just creating that energy of making that meal to also set the energy for the new beginning. Now, on January 1st, we have a different meal that we make, but any kind of meal is really about not only nourishing your soul and your body, but it's about bringing in that creativity, bringing in that energy. So set the intention in some way for you to usher in these new beginnings and these new starts, because every time we go through something, whether it's a difficult situation or something that's really wonderful, we still have to mark the space. We have to look at our timeline and consciously mark the space so that we know, again, where we've been and where we're going. That there's just something very conscious about that whole process. And, when I talk about conscious evolution, that's what it is about, is staying conscious in every moment to know where you are in your soul's development, even if you're struggling with any human condition, because the observation of where you are helps hard set and set your pace for the next, your future, whatever that might mean. So again, if you don't have sage and if you don't have Palo Santo, that's fine. Find something else. You can use incense, you can use bells, you can use something else that's going to help you break up and clear that energy. But use January 1st and the month after basically as a way of really setting your new beginning. It is a calendar year. For some people, they start at their birthday, that's fine too, but really start to integrate this kind of starting over or fresh start energy into your world, because you will see a difference. Again, I've done this for decades and I love doing it because there is a sense of renewal and a sense of peace when you can kind of move into that next you in whatever way that you've set that intention. So I hope some of this information is helpful for you. Again, it's one of those things where the more sacred we can create our path, the more we're going to get out of our experiences and the more we're going to really help our soul's evolution. So thank you for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day and happy new start. Bye-bye.